Good evening. What we are going to do today is I have chosen a few questions which have appeared in the recent bank examinations, and a set of sample questions are there which we are going to deal with one by one today. First, what I have chosen to speak about is data sufficiency. Now, data sufficiency is a topic in which many students have difficulties in solving, because very often people confuse solution of data sufficiency questions with normal solution of mathematical problems themselves. No doubt data sufficiency will be consisting mostly of mathematical problems, but the emphasis is not in solving the question, emphasis is in finding out whether the data given is sufficient or not. For example, we will take up the first question, data sufficiency, one question. First question, or how does it read? We find how many students are there in the class. It's just a question. Very often a question is put up in the data sufficiency type of question without giving any information, or by giving intentionally insufficient data. So from what is available straight away, the question cannot be answered completely without any ambiguity. For that, the question will be always followed by usually two statements, statement 1 and statement 2. Now, what we are supposed to do, what is our task, is not, as I said in the beginning itself, not simply solving the problem, but whether the question which is asked, mainly basic question which is asked, can that be solved by taking up what is given in statement 1, that is data. That first statement is the data given to you. Combining that first statement with whatever information is already available in the question, can we get a clear cut, unambiguous answer for the question? Let us start doing it, you will understand. Now, the question itself is how many students are there in the class. How many students are there in the class is a wild question. You may think, which class we are talking about? How can we answer this question? No doubt, because no further information is given. Which class it is, no idea is given. Now, first statement gives some information. The average weight of the class is 52 kilogram. Now, the average weight of the class is 52 kilogram. Can we find the number of students in the class? That is a question. Whether it is not necessary actually to work out the number of students. Is it possible for us to get the answer for that question? How many students are there in the class if average weight of the class is given, is the question. What is an average? First, for that, if you know what is an average, then it will be possible to answer. Average is how it is calculated, the total sum of all the values, whatever may be the information that is being taken up, divided by the total number. If it is a class, for example, number of students we should know, that is what is to be found out as the answer. What is the individual mark of each student? Sum of all the individual marks divided by the total number of students will give you the average. Now, here in this question, the average weight itself is given. Average weight is given to be 52 kilograms. How many students are there? Or that is the question which is asked. To find out how many students are there, we should not only know the average of the class, we should also know the sum total of all the marks of all the students. That is not given in statement 1. So, statement 1 alone will not be able to help us to find an answer. So, what do we do next? Now, we just leave statement 1 for a while, we do not talk about it. Let us jump to statement 2. Then when you are talking about statement, when you are reading through statement 2, we should forget statement 1. This is very, very important. Most students, what they do when they are trying to solve this question is, the first question still lingers in their mind. First question is still very much there in the question paper. So, they assume that first statement also is to be taken into consideration. No, it is not like that in the beginning. First statement you examined, you tried to find out whether first statement alone is enough to solve the problem or not, you found out. Now, in this particular question, we have decided that it is not possible for us to find how many students are there in the class by just taking the average weight of the class alone. Okay, so ignore that statement. Let us go to the second statement now. Second statement says, if two students weighing 44 kilogram and 52 kilogram leave the class and are replaced by two students weighing 64 kilogram and 56 kilogram, the average weight of the class increases by 1.2 kilogram. So, what is actually happening here? 44 kilogram weight student and 52 kilogram weight student are leaving the class. So, whatever may be the total weight of all the students in the class, that total weight, suppose I call it total weight as T, minus 44. Again another minus 52. So total weight of the class, total weight of all the students in the class minus 44 kilogram minus 52 kilogram will be the new total. But then that is not over. These two students are replaced by two other students. They are weighing 64 kilogram and 56 kilogram. So we have to add them. If you try to simplify this, we get T minus 44 minus 52 is T minus 96 plus 120. This again works out T minus 96 plus 120 works out to T plus 24. So whatever was the original total weight, because of the change of two students going out and two students coming in, the total weight has increased from T to T plus 24. If total weight has increased from T to T plus 24, average will be nothing but total weight divided by the number of students, whatever may be the number of students. So number of students, suppose we call them as n. I will say T plus 24 divided by n will be the new average. Old average was T by n. T by n was given that first, we should not see the first statement at this moment. Whatever was the original thing, by adding 24, T by n was the original average plus 24 by n is the added part of it. 24 by n, how much is it, is given in this second statement. The class average increases by 1.2 kilogram. So average increase is 1.2 kilogram. So 1.2 kilogram increase is equivalent to 1.2 multiplied by whatever be the number of students is equal to 24. That we already get it. So 1.2 into what will give you 24? 1.2 into 20 will give you 24. That means 20 students are there in the class. The number of students in the class is 20. Therefore 20 into 1.20 multiplied by 1.2 will be 24. That 24 is added. Therefore the average increases by 1.2. So we are able to easily resolve that the number of students in the class is 20 by just reading statement 1 alone. And statement 1 we have not used at all here. Now there will be some other type of questions where even after reading statement 2 you may not be able to do that. We will come to when we go to some other question. As far as this particular question is concerned, we took the question, first statement we examined. First statement is not enough for us to solve the problem, so we left it. Go to second statement. Second statement we tried to examine. From the second statement we are able to very confidently say the number of students in the class should be 20, and that is what the question is, how many students are there in the class. That means we are able to solve the problem by taking only statement 2. We don't require statement 1. Now once having done it, we have to look at the choices for answers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now again I have to give only one warning in this stage. Don't blindly think that all the questions of all data sufficiency in all types of question papers in all examinations will follow exactly this method of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is not necessary. Sometimes what is appearing as 1 here may appear as 3 there, what is appearing as 2 here may appear as 4 there, and all this. So different question papers, different paper setters have got different techniques or different interest in setting up these things. So you have to take the question paper and read out exactly what is given there without remembering anything. Now first option here is if the data either in statement 1 alone or in statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question. That is one thing. Now second one is if the data in both the statements 1 and 2 together are not sufficient. Third one is like this. So this is the way it is coming. So how do we answer this question? If you look at all the 5 choices, you will find the last choice. If the data in sufficient 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question, while the data in statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. See, that is important here. Some of the questions, some other type of choice will be there. In this particular question, 5th choice is the only one which suits the truth. So the correct answer is choice 5. That is first question. That is over. Now we will think of going to another question of the same data sufficiency, maybe having some difference. Let us look at the question. What was the percentage of discount given on the marked price of the table? Now, marked price is a very, very important concept, particularly these days. In another 15 days or so, we are going to get a famous Tamil month called Adi. And Adi is the month in which Tallubadi is very famous, that is discount. So that is the time you will find almost every type of business and every shop they will be announcing discount sales and all this. So discount is a very good concept and very important concept, especially in business. We will talk about how it affects. Now one secret about discount price is sometimes people mistake how is it possible for the shopkeeper to reduce the price so much and is he not going to lose and all these things. Never. What is normally done in a business? Suppose I am a shopkeeper, I am a businessman, I am selling, let us say I am a cloth shop owner. What I will do is I will try to procure the cloths which are required for my sales from the wholesale dealers or factory or whatever it is. So I will have certain amount to pay for whatever it is. Say 1 meter cloth may cost to me, including all the transportation and everything, to reach my shop. I may spend say 100 rupees. I am just giving an example for your understanding purposes. Suppose 1 meter cloth costs me 100 rupees. That will be the cost price for me. That price is kept secretly by me. It is never going to be revealed to anybody. 100 rupees is the real cost of that particular cloth for me. Now I would like to make profit in my business. Otherwise there is no point in opening a shop. So what I will do is I will decide how much profit I should get. So I feel that I should get some 30% profit. So I would not like to sell that cloth for less than 130 rupees. So I want to sell it for 130 rupees. One way of doing it is straight away I put the price of the shop price tag. I will put this is 1 meter 130 rupees. You will come to my shop. If you are interested in buying the shop, if you like it, you pay 130 rupees and take it and go. That is as simple as that. But usually business doesn't go that way. Very often there may be people who will be trying to put pressure on me. There may be some friends, there may be some well-known people, there may be some very influential people who would like to come and tell me, sir, you don't sell at that rate for me. I am very close to you. I am such an old customer and various things, blah, 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 many things are there. So people would like to reduce the price still further from 130. And then I will be loser because my profit target will not be achieved. So normally what the businessmen do is they don't fix that even that price which they want to sell for as the actual price. They still boost it up. They will increase the price further from that. That is the real selling price which I am having in mind. But even to that selling price I will make an increase. So on the percentage of selling price I will increase further. Say let me say 20% extra over the selling price. 20% of 130 rupees is 26 rupees. So I will put the marked price, that is what is called marked price. What I mark on the cloth, what I mark in the bale or bundle is 20% more than that selling price, that is 26 rupees more. So I will put 156 rupees, 156 rupees as my cost, as the selling price. Really that is not the selling price which I am having in mind, but I am ready to sell for 156 is what I am announcing to the customer by writing 156 as the cost of it. So you come to my shop, I will show, so this is a nice cloth, you can buy it for 156 rupees, very cheap, it is cheaper than other shops, so many things I will tell. Now you might buy it and go away, but during the season, all the discount sale season like Adi Tellibadi and all that, to get more business, the shopkeepers intentionally put a high price and then cut it, slash it and put another price. My price tag may look like this. I will write a price tag. I will slash it and write 130 rupees. Or instead of writing the price, I will say 20% discount. 20% discount. I may write least, I may simply say 100, both I may write also. 20% Tallubadi or 20% discount I say. 20% of 156. I will say 100, not 20, 130 is the original price, a selling price I wanted. 20% of 130 increased is 156. So I will say discount, already discounted. So I will say final price is 130 rupees. So I am ready to sell for 130 rupees is what my original intention was. But instead of saying my original intention to sell was for 130 rupees, I purposefully, intentionally increase the price to 156 and say I am giving a discount of this and bring it like this. So I showed 156, slash it and show 130. You will be very happy because what was originally to be sold for 156, the shopkeeper is willing to sell me for 130 rupees. You will buy it coolly and go away. And I will make my profit because from 100 rupees original cost, I have been able to sell it for 130 rupees. That 30% profit I get. front it will not be visible.
Hello? Yeah.
Next time at least you can get here, it will be easier to see. So it won't look as if I am seeing it.
Hello? 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 Able to hear?
Display area.
Sir,
Display board area.
display இல்லை சார் ஆடியோ மட்டும்
Audio மட்டும் கேட்கலாம்.
Hello? It's coming live.
I was just explaining about how discount is fixed and how the shopkeepers try to show as if they are giving a very big discount. In reality, they are not reducing their profit. They only boost up the price and say that is the price at which they are ready to sell. But for the sake of customers, they give a discount and they sell it at the price at which they want to sell. This is what I explained. Now, based on that only, the second question is appearing. The question is what? What was the percentage of discount given on the marked price of the table? Is the question. For that, as I explained in the first question also, here also there are two statements. Let us look at the first statement here. First statement is 15% profit was earned by selling the table for rupees 14,490. If there were no discount, percentage profit would have been 20%. So you can see clearly when you read it, even by selling at 14,490, he was able to realize the profit of 15%. So his cost price must have been still less than that. He has sold it at 14,490, he gets 15% profit. But if he did not give that discount, he has done it by giving some discount. But without giving discount, if he had sold it, he would have sold it at still higher price. And he would have got better profit. That means what? His real cost price was not even what you will think his cost price is by taking only 15% as profit. How do we work it out? To find out this, what we can say is his actual cost price is cost price plus profit gives the selling price. So if you work out the equation, you can say if 100 rupees is the cost price and 115 is the selling price, then we say 15% is the profit. So using that comparison, we can say 100 divided by 115. 100 divided by 115, that fraction multiplied by 14,490. This was his original cost price. What is it? That is 12,600. But then he marks the price on that 12,600. So mark price will be still greater than that. So mark price will be 120 divided by 100 times 12,600. That works out to 15,120 From this 15,120, this is the price which is shown in the price tag. But he will slash it and show this is the price at which he sells and you buy it. So from 15,120, he has reduced the price to 14,490. So that is the discount. That discount, the difference between these two works out to be 630 rupees. So 630 rupees divided by 15,120 into 100 is actually 4.17%. It works out to 4.17. You can calculate and see. That is 630 divided by 15,120 multiplied by 100. This works out to 4.17%. So question is, what was the percentage of discount? So you are able to work out the cost of the discount percentage right from the information given under statement 1 alone. So statement 1 alone is okay, but we should not stop the question here. It is possible that statement 2 also may give information. So we have decided now statement 1 alone is sufficient to give answer for the question which is asked. Okay, that is all right, fine. Then let us forget statement 1. Let us go to statement 2 now. Statement 2 says cost price of the table is 12,600. Now don't confuse between what you already worked out in under statement 1. Statement 1 is taken independently and we try to do something about it. We have done it already. We have done with statement 1. Now we go to statement 2. In statement 2, cost price of the table is given to be 12,600. Now what shall we do with that? If cost price is 12,600 and 15% profit, and what was the percentage of discount only is asked. First statement you should not see at all now. Cost price of the table is 12,600. From that, can we decide what was the discount percentage? No, nothing is mentioned about the discount at all in statement 2. And we cannot say anything about discount at all. So second statement is absolutely of no use to us to decide what is the percentage of discount. So in this question, we find that statement 1 is able to help us to find out the discount percentage, whereas statement 2 doesn't give any information other than simply giving the cost price. So the correct answer here is for this, according to the options given in the question, we can see fourth option, that is if the data in statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, while the data in statement 2 is not sufficient. That is the correct answer. So that finishes question 2. I hope you get the point how to tackle such questions. Just one more question only I will take up in data sufficiency before going to another topic. Shall we proceed to the next question? Next question. This is from geometry. What is the area of the circle? Even though it is a geometrical question, what we are going to do is only simple calculation of algebra. So it's very easy. What is the area of a circle? Simply a circle is there. What is the area? How can we decide the area of a circle unless some more measures are given? So naturally the information is incomplete. Intentionally it is given incomplete. Then we have to read that question along with statement 1. Now let me take the first statement. First statement says the diameter of the circle is 90 centimeters less than its circumference. So can we solve the question from this? So for this we should have an idea of what circles are, how diameter is connected with other things, how circumference is calculated and so on. This is a very simple basic mathematics which in lower classes itself you must have studied. So everybody knows if diameter is something, half of it is radius, and every circle has got something called a circumference also, and circumference divided by diameter of any circle is what is known as a famous mathematical constant ratio called pi. So pi is nothing but circumference divided by diameter. I will write it. So circumference divided by diameter. Suppose C I use for circumference and D for diameter. I will say this is the famous constant pi. C divided by pi. Now in this question, the diameter of the circle is going to be 90 centimeters less than its circumference. So what is actually given is C minus D is equal to 90 centimeters. That's what it says. C is the circumference, D is the diameter. Diameter is less than the circumference by 90 centimeters. But there is a connection between C and D also because of this relation. C is equal to pi D. This we can write from this. C is equal to pi D. Pi D is same as 2 pi r, where D is 2r. So people are more familiar with radius, they may say 2 pi r, but whether you call it pi D or 2 pi r, both same. So C minus D is 90. So suppose I substitute for that C from there here is pi D minus D is equal to 90. So I can say pi minus 1 into d is equal to 90, or d is equal to 90 divided by pi minus 1. Pi value is not exactly known, nobody knows that exactly because it is never determinable exactly, but very often in most questions we take it as 22 by 7 or 3.14 and so on like this. So we can even take it as 22 by 7. So we can try to work out d is equal to 90 divided by pi. It is not even necessary to complete this question to work out the answer, but because we are doing it's a very simple calculation, we can say if you assume pi as 22 by 7, 22 by 7 minus 1 will be 15 by 7. So it will be 15 by 7, which is same as 90 into 7 by 2, which will be 42. This will be 42. So diameter will be 42 centimeters. Now the question is, what is the area of the circle? Area of the circle is pi r square or pi d square by 4. Both ways you can work it out. Area is 1/4 of pi d square or pi r square. So pi d is already known. So 1/4 of pi d square, if you work it out, it comes to 1386. I am not going to work it out. It's not necessary. You can try it if you want. Area comes to be 1386 square centimeter because radius, diameter, etc. in centimeters. So what the idea is, area of the circle can be calculated. The question is only what is the area of the circle. You can't say what the area of the circle is unless some information is given. Statement 1 gives you some information. What is the information given? The diameter of the circle is 90 centimeters less than the circumference. Because diameter and circumference are really related, we are using that relationship. We are trying to solve it by simple mathematical calculations. We are able to get the area of the circle. That means statement 1 alone is helping us to find the area of the circle. That finishes this. Now don't stop here again. As I told you, statement 1 alone, whether it gives or not, we cannot stop there. We have to think of statement 2 also, forgetting statement 1 for the present. Now let us leave statement 1. Let us go to statement 2. The radius of the circle is equal to the length of a rectangle whose breadth is 18 centimeters and perimeter is 78 centimeters. So totally a different type of information is given. Try to let us look at that also. Here the radius of the circle, if you call it say r, radius of the circle is equal to the length of a rectangle whose breadth is 18 centimeters and perimeter is 78 centimeters. Now for that you should know what a rectangle is. A rectangle, you say this is length, this is breadth. If this is length, this also will be length, this will be breadth. This everybody knows about a rectangle because all the angles are 90 degrees. That means perimeter is nothing but sum of all the four sides together. So if we call perimeter as P, I will say L plus B plus L plus B, 2L plus 2B. So it is 2 times L plus B, that is perimeter. And perimeter is given to be 78 centimeters. And breadth is given to be 18 centimeters. L is not given, but L can be found out. By simplifying this, 78 is equal to 2 times L plus 2 times 18, 2 18s are 36. So 78 minus 36 will give you 2L, 78 minus 36 will give you 42, 42 is equal to 2L, so L is equal to 21. We can say length is 21 and the radius of the circle is equal to the length, it says. That means radius is 21, already I found out. Once you know the radius, pi r square can be found out. Pi r square will give you the same 1386 area which we got in statement 1, but don't think that anything to do with statement 1 and 2 is here. In fact, there are some questions usually appearing in data sufficiency. Statement 1 alone may give one answer. Statement 2 alone may give a different answer. We should not get confused by that. We are not worried about statement 1 and statement 2 being agreeable to each other. Whether statement 1 alone can help us to get the answer is what we are examining. Then we forget statement 1. Then whether statement 2 alone is enough to give us the answer. That is what we examine. Very often, as I told you, there are questions sometimes asked by the paper setters where statement 2 alone will give one type of answer. Statement 1 alone may give different type of answer. There is no contradiction. Both the statements are independently enough to give the answer. That is the idea that we are examining, not the answer itself. That's why I was telling in the beginning itself, the obtaining the answer is not important. Whether we will be able to obtain the answer or not is more important in this type of questions. Here luckily we are able to find that statement 2 also gives the same area. Statement 1 also gives same area. So independently statement 1 alone is able to lead us to area. Independently, statement 2 alone is able to lead us to area. So, this is a question where statement 1 alone is able to give answer without considering statement 2. Statement 2 alone is able to give answer without considering statement 1. That means here, if you look at the choices carefully, you can see the first choice itself is the correct choice, because if the data either in statement 1 alone or in statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question. That is the correct answer for this question. I hope these 3 questions are sufficient for us to give an idea about what do you mean by data sufficiency. I hope you got it. We will see the next set of questions. Probability. Probability is a topic which taxes the brain of very many students, because very often people confuse probability with something. They understand a little bit, but very often some confusion arises. What is probability? Probable is a very common English word. We say something is probable or not. Will it rain or will it not rain? Yes, it is probable that it may rain. It is probable that it may not rain. These are all very common discussions. People understand them by common sense and all these things. If we find certain factors which are favorable for something to occur, we say that thing is more favorable. If we find certain things are not favorable, then we find that is not probable. So, favorability of something occurring is increasing the probability. Unfavorability of something occurring decreases the probability. This is the basic idea of probability that works out in mathematics also. Now, if you want to work out probability, probability is always expressed in the form of a ratio. That is, in numerator divided by denominator. Denominator represents what are all the possible outcomes, number of all possible outcomes in a particular situation. That is what we mean by the denominator. In the numerator, what are all the favorable outcomes possible in that particular case is what we say. Numerator gives you all the possible favorable outcomes. Denominator gives you all the possible outcomes. Possible and probable are two different. All that is possible is put in the denominator. We don't put in the numerator all that is possible. We put in the numerator only what that is favorable to what we want to happen. So, for example, if you toss a coin, a very common example, a coin has got a head as well as a tail. So, if you toss a coin, is it going to be head or tail? This is the famous way we decide several things. Even in cricket, who is to bat first, who is to bowl first, and all this, as you know. And many things are decided on this type of tossing and all this. So, why it is decided like this? It is possible that you may get head or you may get tail, and head and tail are the only two possibilities. We don't expect the coin to stand vertically down like as we read it in some funny jokes and all this. We expect either the head to appear or tail to appear. What are the chances? Head and tail are the two possibilities. If the coin is a proper coin, head may appear or tail may appear, the chances are equal, 50-50%. That's why we say 50-50 or 1/2. So, head may appear or tail may appear. It may be heads or tails. So, the two sides, one side captain asks for head, another side captain says tail, means they are equally favored, equally unfavored, you can say. There is no question of somebody being favored more than the other. Then only such things will be properly justified. So, we say probability is 1/2 because there are two possibilities. Maximum possibilities are two, head or tail. So, we put it in the denominator. Suppose somebody calls head, the chances of head appearing is 1 out of 2. So, 1 is appearing in the numerator. That is a very simple probability. Now, let us go to some actual questions which are a little more complicated, but they are not that complicated. If we read it and understand it simply, it will be enough. To solve these questions, we require a background knowledge of permutations and combinations. I assume that you know permutations and combinations because I am going to directly apply permutation combination. Actually, not even permutations, only combinations will be required here. So, combination idea if you know, I will straight away use it and solve these questions. Let us look at the first question. It's a very interesting question. A bag contains 4 blue shirts, 5 red shirts and 6 yellow shirts. That means totally 4 plus 5 plus 6. That will be 15 shirts. There are 15 shirts, 3 different colors, 4 blue, 5 red and 6 yellow. I will just write only the basic things there for convenience. So, blue, there are 4. Red, 5. Yellow, 6. So, 4 plus 5 plus 6, totally 15 shirts. That is okay, it's easy to understand. Now what is the question? 3 shirts are drawn randomly. Randomly means we don't give any preference. We don't think that I would like to have this shirt only, so let me search for it and take it out. Blindly we just pick out. You don't see it and try to pick up as you like. Just 3 shirts you pick up from the bag without seeing it. That means randomly you are choosing. Now the question is, what is the probability? I mean, what are the chances that exactly one of them is blue? So we are interested in at least one out of the 3 should become blue. The other 2, at least one only we say. That means all the 3 may be blue, 2 of them may be blue, one other may be red or yellow, or only one is blue. All the 3 possibilities are required here. We are thinking of only exactly one. What is the probability that exactly one of them is blue? This is different. What I said is, it may be at least one. At least is different from exactly. This question we are not talking about at least one. I was mentioning is sometimes people confuse between this choice and that choice. Exactly one of them is blue means other 2 should not be blue. Other 2 should be maybe yellow, both may be yellow, or one may be yellow and another may be red, or both may be red. That doesn't matter. But exactly one of them is blue means only one and only one should be blue. Whereas if we say at least one blue, then 1 may be blue, or 2 may be blue, or 3 may be blue. So that is a different question, this is a different question. So we should not confuse. Very often people mistake one question for another and do wrongly. So you have to be careful here. Now let us do this question. 3 shirts are drawn randomly. What is the probability that exactly one of them is blue? Exactly one of them is blue means what we can do is, best thing is, what are the possibilities, what is the highest probability for one blue shirt? There are only 4 blue shirts, out of which one has to be chosen. So the probability for that is, number of possibilities, a number of ways by which one shirt can be chosen is 4C1. 4C1 is actually 4 itself. I am not going to work out individually because you are expected to know combinations. So 4C1 is 4. Then if 1 is 4C1, it is not enough. Not only one should be blue, the other 2 should not be blue. So other 2 could be anything from either red or yellow. So what we are not worried whether it is going to be 1 red, 1 yellow, or 2 red or 2 yellow and all. We are not interested. We want to see that others are not blue. So how many are the non-blue shirts? Blue shirts are only 4. Non-blue shirts are 5 plus 6, 11. Red and yellow together is 11 shirts. So out of the remaining 11 shirts, whatever shirts are chosen as the next 2 shirts, it does not matter. That will work out. So we will say 4C1 multiplied by 11C2 is what we want. These are the possible outcomes which are needed here. So 4C1 decides one blue shirt, multiply it simultaneously. When you have to decide, you have to multiply it. This or that means and will come. This and that means multiplication will come. That is when we actually try to explain probability in greater detail, we can take up. Here I am trying to work out only questions based on the old principles. So 4C1 multiplied by 11C2. This is the possible outcomes of what we require. But you should not forget that probability is nothing but a ratio of what are the favorable outcomes divided by what are the maximum possible outcome. Maximum possible outcome is 3 shirts to be chosen out of 15 shirts. That is the maximum possibility. So 15C3. 15C3 is the maximum possible outcomes. All the possibilities of choosing 3 shirts is 15 out of 15 total shirts. 3 shirts are to be chosen. That comes in the denominator. Nothing is more than that. Whereas what we require is only 1 blue shirt and other 2 non-blue shirts. So 4C1 into 11C2. If you simplify it, we will get the answer. We try to simplify it. I think straight away we will give the answer. I will simply write it quickly. You can work it out directly. 11C2 is 11 into 10 divided by 2 into 1 divided by, this is 15C3, 15 into 14 into 13 divided by 3 into 2 into 1. So 14 into 4 into 11 into 10 divided by 2.1 divided by this. If you try to simplify it, we get simply 44 divided by 91. So 44 by 91 is the answer, and you can see A, B, C, D choices are given. A, B, C, D choices. The correct choice is option 4. So that is the answer. This is the first question. Next question is also to be answered similarly, but different calculation. Next question let us take up. One shirt is drawn randomly. So same basic information is the same. 4 blue shirts, 5 red shirts and 6 yellow shirts are available. Out of them, this is a different type of combination now. One shirt is only drawn randomly. What is the probability that what is drawn is either red or yellow? Here there is no blue involved here. So that means blue shirt should not be there. It can be either red or yellow. Because it can be either red or yellow, it doesn't matter to distinguish between red and yellow. We will remove as if there is no blue shirt, only yellow and red are there. How many are there? You can see. Yellow, there are 6. Red, there are 5. So totally there are 11. Out of these 11 shirts, any one shirt is okay for me, because what I need is either a yellow or red only. So the favorable outcomes is 11C1. That is in the numerator. Denominator is very simple. All the possible shirts are 15, out of which one shirt. So 15C1. So this is an easier calculation than the earlier question. 11C1 divided by 15C1. 11C1 is simply 11. 15C1 is simply 15. So the correct answer is 11 by 15. That is option 4. So it's an easy, much easier question than the earlier one. But principle is the same. Let us go to question number 3. Question number 3. Question number 3. 2 shirts are drawn randomly. What is the probability that both of them are blue? So again, let us see. The same basic information is there. 4 blue, 5 red and 6 yellow. Here 2 shirts have to be drawn. And both of them we want them to be blue. We don't want red, we don't want yellow. That means there are only 4 shirts blue which are blue, out of which both the shirts which we take should be blue. 4C2 is the only way 2 shirts can be drawn, both blue. This is the numerator. Denominator is actually, as you know, 15 shirts are there, 2 shirts have been drawn, 15C2. So this is again simple. This is nothing but 4 into 3 divided by 2 into 1 divided by 15 into 14 divided by 2 into 1. In fact, you can simplify it as it is, or you can even cancel this denominator and this denominator and write it as 4 into 3 divided by 15 into 14. That simply works out to be 2 by 35. You can simplify it. It will work out to be 2 divided by 35. That is choice 2. Now, fourth question. If 3 shirts are drawn randomly, here is a question of again drawing 3 shirts, but this is different from first question. First and fourth question partly they are same. First question also 3 shirts are drawn randomly. Fourth question also 3 shirts are drawn randomly. But in the first question, what is the probability that exactly one of them is blue? Is what we did in the first question. Here, what is the probability that all the 3 shirts are of different color? So there are 3 colors only given in the set, and we want one each. 3 colors we want. I want one blue shirt, one red shirt, one yellow shirt. So what is the possibility of drawing a blue shirt? 4 blue shirt, out of which one has to be drawn. So 4C1. Also I want one red shirt. So it is 5C1. Also I want one yellow shirt. So 6C1. These are all the favorable outcomes for getting one blue shirt, one red shirt only. That means one of each color. That is for the numerator. Denominator is of course maximum 3 shirts out of 15. So 15C3. This has to be simplified. Numerator is very simple. 4C1 is nothing but 4. This is 5. This is 6. Denominator is of course 15 into 14 into 13 divided by 3 into 2 into 1. This of course again can be easily simplified. This simplification simply works out to be 24 divided by 91. So this is 24 divided by 91, which is actually second choice. So fourth question also easy. Like that, any number of probability questions can be worked out, but working out more and more probability questions will help people to do things faster. So that is about probability. Now we will come to a very, very important topic called the dual series. Now this dual series I particularly chose for this show because many people don't even understand this question. These type of questions are not previously being asked in bank exams. They used to come only in CAT exams and some other type of higher level testing. But recently in the past 2-3 years we find dual series also appears in sometimes. I found that same type of question in IBPS exam 2 years ago. Even recently when State Bank exam has come. So it is better for students who appear for banking exams and other exams also to learn about these things. Now it is nothing so great about it, but only thing is you should try to understand what these questions mean, then it should not be very difficult. Normal series sequence questions people know, they do it, but dual series questions are slightly different. In dual series what happens is, there is a series of course given. Here as you can see the first question itself, you can take it up. First question you find one row is there, 7, 9, 21, 67, 273, 1371 are given. to over, then 7, 9, 21, 67, 273, definitely you can see there is a series in this. Some series is there. You should try to find out how the series comes. Normal series type of questions you might have done, you might have practiced a lot of questions otherwise also. But this question is different from the other type of series question in the sense that you find not only 7, 9, 21, 67, 273, 13, 71, below also you find another set of things except the first number, others are not given exact value. First one is given to be 6, others are marked as A, B, C, D, E. That means A, B, C, D, E have to be replaced by actually some numbers. Those numbers, what are they? We are not expected to find out all of them. In fact, the question comes just below it. What will come in the place of B? But to find B, you should know A also, because from 6 A only B will come. C, D, E need not be found out. Suppose E is asked, you have to go right up to E. If D is asked, you have to stop at D. In this question, luckily you may have to go only up to B. But how to do it? First of all, we should know how this 7, 9, 21, 67, 273, 13, 17, what is the logic? What is the rule behind which these things are coming? 7, 9, 21, 67, 273. That you will have to work it out. Sometimes it will be very easy, sometimes it is not that easy. You will have to try to all possible combination, multiplication, division, addition, all types of mathematical jugglery will have to be done. This will come only with practice. There is no shortcut for such things, but with a little bit of examining it, you can see 7, 9, 21, they are all increasing, and increase also first you see 7 to 9 is not a very big increase. 9 to 21 is little more. To 21 to 61 is even greater. Then up to 270, more 13, 17. So the increase is becoming faster and faster. So there can maybe some sort of multiplication, some additions involved here. Possibility of division and subtraction may not be there. That much you can guess. But still we have to work it out. From 7, how can we get 9? By trying various methods, we can easily say. Suppose you say 7 multiplied by 1 and add to it. 7 into 1 is 7 plus 2 is 9. I will write it down. Seven into 1 plus 2, that becomes 9. Then this is where the difference comes. Sometimes you will find the type of series questions, some of the series questions which you might have practiced, where a particular formula or a mathematical way of doing it will be coming with this constant difference or increasing difference in a particular way and all that. Here it is not like that. Here these type of questions you always find the predecessor member will generate the second number. The second number will generate the third number and so on like this. So for example, 7 into 1 plus 2 is 9. Then you have to take 9 here. Then how will it come? 21. For that you can try to combination. You can write 9 2s are 18 plus 3. That gives 21. This will give you an idea. 7 into 1 plus 2 is 9. 9 into 2 plus 3 is 21. So as you see 1, 2, 2, 3 comes. So possibly next one will be 21 into 3 plus 4. Is it working out? That you have to only by trial and error you will find out. But once you find out 21 into 3 is 63 plus 47 comes, that means we are right. We are on the right track. That 67 will come here. 67 into 4 plus 5. How much is it? This comes to 273. Very good. That is there already. Similarly 273. Unless you complete this table, you will not know exactly how things are working out. This is what will take time. This you have to work it out. Once you work it out, then solving the question is very simple, because exactly in the same way the second line, that second row is formed. Here the first number is 6 instead of 7, there it is 6. But same rule, 6 into first one, how it is first number into 1 plus 2. Similarly, first number 6 into 1 plus 2. 6, 1 is 8. Then that comes here. Same way, 8 comes here. Here second one into 2 plus 3. So into 2 plus 3. So it is 19. And this is your A. I'm sorry, this is your A. This is your B. Now luckily in this question, B is only asked. If necessary, we can go further. 19 into another question. Suppose they ask something else, you can say like this and you have to work it out. But in this case, it is not necessary. So here it is stopping here itself. So 19 is the answer we want. And 19 is given as one of the choices, third choice. So that is the way it works out. Each question is different. Some questions are a little more complicated, some questions will be easy. Some formula, some secret is used there. So let us go to question number 2. Question number 2, I'll again do the table for the first row, and based on that second row has to be worked out. Same procedure, only different type of formula, different type of cracking has to be used. Here it is 2, 11, 52, 183, 430, then it is 555. Then let us see how from 2 to 11, 50. See here the jump is even, say 2, 11, 52, 183, 430, 555. Here also it increases enormously. So what is likely here? Chances are probably even stronger way of increasing. So if you think like that and work it out, you can see 2, from 2 you have to get 11. So it works out like this. 2 into 5 is 10, 10 plus 1 cube. Because it is cube only, it is going to increase, but because 1 cube is only 1, it becomes small. Next it will be different. This is another thing, but it is still, if you take 11 into 6 and do it, it will become exceeding. Here it is, twist is there. This is 5, it is in decreasing order. 11 into 4, but this is increasing. So you see, you can see double trick is used. 2 into 5 plus 1 cubed, 11 into 4 plus 2 cubed. This is increasing, 1 cube, 2 cube, 3 cubed, it will go like this. Here 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it will go like this. So that is why it is adjusted. So here it will work out to 52. 11 4s are 44, 44 plus 8 is 52. Here that 52 comes here, 52 into 5, 4, 3 only here. But this will be 3 cubed. This is increasing, this is decreasing. 52 into 3, 52 into 3 plus 3 cubed is 27, it comes to 183. Then 183 into 2 plus 4 cube. So this is smaller, that is bigger. So this will come to 430. You can work it out and see. And 430, you take it here. This into 1. This series stops here. Afterwards 0 only will come. But this is not given beyond that, so we don't have to worry. So plus 5 cubed. This will become 555. This is the way it works out. So same rule you have to follow for the second line. 4 into 5 plus 1 cubed is 21. That is A. Then 21 into 4 plus 2 cubed. That comes to 92, which is B. Now what is the asked here is only what will come in the place of B. Here also it is only up to B is asked. So you can stop here. If C is asked, you have to go further. D is asked, you have to go further, and so on. Here also question stops here because what is asked is only B and we have found out to be 92. That is choice 3. Then question 3 again similar. Another procedure will be there, but the same type of cracking has to be done. Third one is 4, 7, 19, 73, 361, 2161. So here what is the rule by which it comes? That we have to crack. If you examine 4, 7, here also it is increasing only, but you will find 4 to 7 almost double, 7 to 19 little more than double, but not here. You can see increases also happening, but increase is not like the first question or second question. Second question we found increase was very fast, that's why that cubes are coming, but still it was moderated by the first multiplying number becoming less and less. First question was moderately increasing both ways. This one is slightly different. Here the increase is not going to be that fast, but there still the increase is there. So here you can expect some type of reduction in some way. So if you try to work it out, you can do one way. You can find out 4 2s minus 1 is 7. Here it is 7 3s minus 2. So this is increasing negatively. So the negative effect will be bringing it down lower and lower. So this becomes 19. This is 19 into 4 minus 3. So that comes to 73. 73 into 5 minus 4. This is also increasing, this is also increasing, but negatively increasing, therefore the effect is negative more. So this is 361. 361 into 6 minus 5, that becomes 2161. So this way this works out. So we go to the second line. Second line starts with 8. It is double that 4. So we can expect these numbers to become larger and larger, but not exactly double. We can see 8 instead of 4, here it is 8. So 8 2's minus 1. So naturally that is 15, which is your A. Again 15 into 3 minus 2. 15 3s are 45, minus 2 is 43. See, it was 7 to 19, 4 to 7, 7 to 19. Here 8, double that. So 8 to 15, 15 to 43. It will be more than double these values, but it will go in the similar way. So 43 into 4 minus 3. Here it comes to 169. That is C. But here the question is what will come in the place of C. So this is what you want. So it stops here. You don't have to go to D and E. So this is the procedure. This type of questions will come. Number of questions have to be practiced. A number of different types of combinations will come. Some of them will be easier, some will be more difficult. You will have to try such questions. Then it will be done. That is the, I think. How easily can we solve dual series questions? So how easily, as I already was mentioning it, doing it. See, you have to get the knack of how the series develops. As I was explaining, even during each and every question, we see it is increasing. There will be, I have not chosen that type of question. There are more questions. If you do, we can see. If you do a complete session on these things, we will get other type of question. You will find it is not, sometimes it will decrease. This may start with some number, say 15, 12, 13, then it will start increasing. So you will find some decrease then increase. Sometimes one number will be decreasing, other will be increasing. Sometimes fractions will come. Sometimes negative numbers may come. All possibilities are there. It all depends on how the formula is formed. So by looking at these things, what are the possibilities only? But just by looking, we cannot decide this formula will not come immediately to mind. Say by looking at it, we cannot say 4 times 2 minus 1, automatically it will not come to the mind. But you can see 4 to 7, 19, 73, it comes like this. So there is an increase, but some sort of orderliness is there. Sometimes it may be very simple, like normal series is all cubes, all squares, all differences are commonly increasing the same way. That type of series is easier. Here it is not like that. If you find the differences, it will not give any clue. 4 and 7, 3, 7 and 19, 12, 19 and 73 is 53, 54. Like that, it will not give an idea immediately. So easily it will not come. So there are no blind shortcuts for these things. With practice, you will be able to do faster and faster. So I can only suggest that you have to practice a large number of questions of these things so that you will be able to get the idea, because it has to strike you. Something has to strike in your mind, oh, it may be like this, but you will have to work it out. But you cannot waste a lot of time on this type of questions. There are no blind shortcuts for this type of questions.